Hey Dan, how's it going?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Big fight coming up next month. You're taking on Jim Miller in Atlantic City. Let's go back to when this fight was put together. We knew you were booked for a fight. Was it always Jim Miller, or were there other opponents that the UFC had offered you first?
Yeah, there were a few other names pulled up, but then had an opponent, then lose opponent, had an opponent, lose opponent. So yeah, they kind of kept moving the goalposts a bit. But this was always the date originally, so I've been focused more on the date than the opponent, and then I seen Jim Miller's name come up, and man, I'm 100% on board with that fight.
Nice, and yeah, because you're taking on a big and well-respected name in the division, a real veteran. How excited were you when they finally came with Jim Miller?
Yeah, well, I was very excited. Jim Miller's one of the guys I've been watching in this sport for a very long time. There's a lot of guys walking around calling themselves UFC veterans after a couple of fights, but Jim Miller's as veteran as they get. I think this fight ties him with Bisping for the most UFC fights of all time. So it's a funny thing because when I got into the sport, the guy with the most fights was uh, that was the biggest accomplishment in the sport. Not all this kind of other stuff like who gets the most retweets or who gets the most Instagram likes. When I got into the sport, it was who's had the most fights, who's been at it the longest, who's been competing against the best guys consistently for the longest. So for me to get Jim Miller uh, is a huge opportunity for me.
Absolutely, and he is coming off a loss. He's lost his last three in a row, where like you're enjoying perhaps the best stretch of your MMA career. Was part of you disappointed that it wasn't a ranked opponent or someone coming off a win? Or I mean, like you said, there were names that were thrown at you before, but I mean, did the big name excite you at the end of the day?
Yeah, I think well, this name excites me more than you know let's say a third of the top 15. The name Jim Miller, that's something that I want. That's something that I've wanted for a long time. So yeah, this excites me more than getting a ranked opponent no one's heard of. I'd rather fight Jim Miller. He's a huge name in the sport. I tell people and they know instantly who I'm talking about. I don't say the name and they kind of think, oh yep, who the hell is that? People know who Jim Miller is. They know what he's about, and I think that's why this fight got matched.
Nice, and you don't have to mention who the other people were offered, but were any of the offered fights before Jim Miller ranked opponents?
Yes.
Okay, we'll leave it at that.
So that's like it's a good insight into where the UFC sees me. Like where they see me gone and what they see of my last two performances. They're not just wins; they're two uh, exciting finishes. Really get the job done against two very sharp fighters. So even though this is not a ranked opponent, I would like to get this Jim Miller fight over a ranked opponent. And then next, obviously, I'll sit back and wait for a name that comes up with one of those little numbers next to it.
Absolutely, and you're fighting him in his hometown or his home state. Do you feel that's more stress on him than on you because you've done the whole hometown fight? So that's why I want to ask you: do you feel like it's more pressure on the hometown guy or the opposition?
Um, I feel in general it's more pressure on the hometown guy, fighting in front of his friends and family. But Jim Miller's, he's done this many times. He's won in front of his friends in the hometown. He's lost in his hometown. He's had so many fights that this is really nothing new to him. And so, whatever pressure that there would be, supposedly, I don't think that that's going to affect a guy like Jim Miller the same as it would affect a lesser experienced opponent.
Absolutely, and tell me a little bit about your training camp. How do you see this fight playing out? And has there been a specific focus or something in his game that you feel like you have to watch out for? I mean, I know he's coming off three losses in a row, but they're very competitive fights against great opponents as well. So I'm sure you're going to look at him as the Jim Miller that we all know, as opposed to a guy who's lost 3 in a row.
Yeah, you go back and watch film, and Jim Miller's competed against everyone. He's always been competitive, and he's always been in those fights. No one's ever blows Jim Miller out of the water. He's a very tough guy, and he brings a lot of difficult things to the table. So we're we're covering every base in this training camp: wrestling, grappling, striking. I see this fight taking place in all the aspects. I just see a grueling fight. I see this as a hard fight. I see this fight coming down to who wants it more. You fight Jim Miller. He's a tough guy. I don't think I'm going to be able to take him out there easily. So I'm looking for a 3-round, very, very high paced fight. A lot of scrambles, a lot of grappling exchanges, and I just picture a tough fight against Jim Miller. That's all I'm going into this fight thinking.
Nice, and I feel like this matchup is kind of like the sleeper for fight of the night. I mean, I know a performance of the night is always better, but I feel like this is one of the fights that we could see fight of the night. Did you agree?
Yeah, definitely. Jim Miller, he's never in a boring fight. He'll constantly push the pace and keep that pressure on. And if he brings you in that fight, he wants to get in that kind of fight. I'll give him an exciting fight. I'll look to match the intensity that he kind of brings to the cage. So yeah, Dan Hooker and Jim Miller inside the cage. That's definitely fight of the night. It's gonna be a good one.
Absolutely, and there's a rumor that just surfaced now that Frankie Edgar and Cub Swanson might be added to that card. Did you hear about that? And is that exciting for you to have another big fight on the same card?
No, I haven't heard about that yet, but no, that's a great fight. Those are two that'll bring a lot more eyes. If you throw Frankie Edgar and Cub Swanson on this card, that's a lot more eyes brought to this card, which is always good. You get more attention around the card. That's another big fight. I know we got Barbosa, Kevin Lee. So yeah, there are a lot of exciting matchups, and I think that this is definitely a card to watch.
Absolutely. And your teammate Israel Adesanya, who you've been telling me about for quite a while, made a very successful debut last month. How happy and excited were you to see him finally get his shine and finally get his moment? I mean, you've been telling everybody about him, but how did it feel to finally kind of see him in the UFC?
Yeah, I was, very proud moment seeing, Israel do what we all knew he was capable of. We always knew that he would get to the UFC, and to see that kind of dream realized, or that vision more than a dream. It's always been a vision of Israel's coach, and, Israel to realize that moment. So I feel like it's the beginning of something, and it's a lot more attention, in our little country around here now that Israel's there as well, and Israel's kind of showing that potential to not only be like a very good fighter, an elite level fighter, but also he brings that that undefeated air. He's a very exciting guy. He's good on the microphone, so he's got that potential to be not only a star and a good fighter, but a superstar within the sport.
Definitely, and he's competing a week before you. Were you hoping that you guys may end up on the same card, or was there any possibility of that happening, or was he always just going to fight on the Glendale card?
It's kind of just the way the chips fall. We don't get too carried away about, getting set on dates or getting, we should have been on the same card, or I wish it would have this would have been easier. Our team is just focused on the fight. We let the chips fall where they may, and this is the way it's worked. So it actually works out quite well that my coaches will already be there for Israel, so they just have to fly across the country and get fight week going 2 weeks straight. So it'll be good to have more of my team there. So not only the coaches I'm going with, but the coaches that Israel's there with, and we all kind of meet up in Atlantic City. So it'll be good to have a big crew of us, big crew of the Kiwis over to take over Atlantic City.
Yeah, and it must be nice to be preparing for a fight for pretty much the same time, like same timetable, having that energy in the gym. Do you like that when when you got a teammate or a couple of teammates fighting around the same time?
Yeah, our gym in New Zealand is it's constantly got guys getting ready for fights. So it's not just me and Israel. We got a bunch of other guys preparing for fights on that same weekend. I think we got two other guys fighting the same weekend that I'm fighting, but we got guys fighting for titles in Australasia this weekend, the weekend after, the weekend after that, the weekend after that. So it's just a constant. It's a constant thing for our gym, and it's one kind of big snowball, and we just like to keep it rolling.
Definitely. You're 2-0 since moving up to lightweight. Obviously, a much more comfortable weight cut. But what differences have you been feeling in terms of performance since your move up?
Oh, it's just uncomparable, Yeah, it's just a different guy. This is the guy that my training partners know in the gym. My coaches and training partners have been said for a long time that I should have been, competing at lightweight. But I'm stubborn. I thought I could make it. I thought it wasn't taking as big of a toll on my body as I thought it was. But once I made the move and I started training with the at the weight I should be, and fueling my body the way I should be fueling it, then I saw those results immediately, and now everyone's seeing them. This is the Dan Hooker that I envision, the one at lightweight that just kind of goes in there, and he's a very sharp fighter, and he's very difficult to get out of there.
Absolutely. And now you're booked for a fight in the first half of 2018, so April. When you look at this year, what would you say are your goals? Is there a certain number of fights you'd like to get in? Do you hope to get a number or ranking next to your name by the year's end?
I might play reverse psychology with the UFC because after every fight I ask for another fight straight away, and it never happens. So maybe I'll tell them that I'm going to sit on the couch and I'll get a fight actually. So I honestly don't know how to play it. It's they've been giving me 2 fights a year for the last 4 years. So I can only predict that is going to be the way it continues. I think they'll want me on the next card in Australia. This fight and the previous fight have been in the US. So I'd like to fight close to home, back in Australia or New Zealand. If the UFC wants to bring it there against a ranked opponent.
Have they told you a date of when they're looking to go next?
No, I'm not too sure when that next Australasian card gets announced, but I'll 100% jump on that next card.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you, do you prefer fighting close to home, or do you like... I mean, the trip overseas is important as well, right? Because it's new fans. Like you said, if this card, if Swanson and Edgar get on this card, there's going to be a ton of eyes, because that's probably going to be one of the better free cards that the UFC have had in a very long time. So, in a way, obviously, there are advantages of fighting in the US, but would you say you prefer fighting close to home or traveling across?
Close to home every time. Mate, if I could have UFC Auckland every time, I would. The travel is a bit of a pain, being away from your friends and family, but it's just something that you have to do, competing from this corner of the globe. But I've traveled my last 2, so I'd like to get the next one at home.
I mean, definitely, because Australasian MMA hasn't been any hotter than it is right now. So I feel like you guys on your own could like put together a massive card, like without you guys having to fight to the other side of the world.
Yeah, 100%. There's some big names coming up. Like me and Israel. I think we could carry a card if the UFC brought it back to New Zealand. I think me and Israel Adesanya could definitely carry and headline. We've got 2 other guys, Luke Jamo, and then Shane Young. So that's 4 New Zealand fighters on that card. You throw Mark Hunt in there, we got a sellout. Man, I should get a job at the UFC for booking events.
Absolutely. And a couple
I'm
more.
the next matchmaker.
Definitely. A couple more things. Do you plan on flying to New Jersey a bit before to get acclimated and all that?
So I'll fly a week before. You know, me and my team we've traveled a lot. I've been traveling overseas. I think my third fight I ever had was in a different country. So I'm very used to traveling to fights, all throughout Asia. But so we're very used to it, and we're very understanding of the toll that long trips take on your body. So we go over a week before. Atlantic City's not an elevation or anything, so we don't have to acclimatize to that so much. So a week before, I feel like that's enough.
Definitely. And one last thing, I appreciate the time. How do you see this fight playing out? How do you get the job done?
Yeah, it's a difficult fight to kind of predict. Jim Miller's very well rounded, so I'm going in there to push a mean pace. Whatever energy that Jim Miller brings to the table, I'll match it equally, and we'll kind of just see who can keep their foot on the pedal for the longest. So I see a 15-minute grind match playing out with Jim Miller. Very difficult to take out. So I'm expecting to get my hand raised after a 15-minute grind any way I can.
Absolutely. Well, Dan, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, and best of luck next month in Atlantic City.
Thank you very much.